Chris Speaks here tonight with Sheila Banister, who is seeking the Republican nomination for House District 4. She's ready to come on with me. Sheila, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, good. So Sheila, tell me a little about your background information. Where are you from? What got you this spot? Just a little bit about Sheila.
Yeah, so no problem. So, um, actually, I was born and raised in Indiana, just a few hours north of here. And my husband is a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. And my professional background is in management consulting. I have a master's in organizational management. And so we've kind of lived all over the United States, traveled around with our careers, and mainly, the Air Force moving us around. And we were ready to retire from the Air Force, and we looked around at all of our options, and both of us had, in our professional lives, had come in and out of North Alabama working. And so when we looked at all of our different options of where we could settle, we have a 6-year-old daughter where we wanted to raise her. We both just felt like North Alabama really aligned with our values and fit with our careers, and was just a great place for us to settle down. So we chose to come to Alabama, put roots down here. And so, my husband works supporting activities on the Redstone Arsenal here. And I worked in management consulting for nearly 15 years. My last big job was with Accenture. They're a global consulting firm. And basically my job was to go in and lead teams with Fortune 500 companies, nonprofits, government entities, and helping make transformational change within their organizations. So we basically go in and help businesses fix their problems. And it was a great job. I stepped away from that full time because my husband got deployed to Afghanistan. We had kids at home, and we both couldn't be gone from home. So I stepped away from that full time. And since then, I've been doing some consulting on the side on my own, and managing some real estate that we have, and just really getting involved in the community.
How long have you been?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Have you been living in Alabama?
About 4 years now.
Okay. So the job you was talking about, it sounds like it's pretty. What am I looking for saying? You said you're going in to handle a problem. So basically, that's what you do. You go in there and you solve things.
Right. So a lot of times, just kind of depended on the client. One of my clients was actually the Hartford Group, which is a large insurance corporation. And you probably remember a few years ago, well, I guess it was more than a few years ago, but several insurance companies took a bailout from the federal government. And so after they did that, we came in and my team helped them basically figure out how to fix their problems so that they could pay the government back the loan that they took. So we looked at their business processes, how they were running their organization, found ways that they could streamline processes, how they could be more efficient. And so, I specialized in the people aspect of it. So org design, how they were structured, looking at redundancies in the workforce, anything that we could combine and, just streamline and help people to be more effective so that they're using the money and more wisely so that they don't have to get into that kind of situation again where they have to be a burden to the community. Another client that I had was the United Nations. Again, helping them streamline a lot of their day-to-day processes across the Secretariat. So, the United Nations, huge. They have offices and facilities all across the globe. And so it was looking at that and saying, as groups grow, oftentimes they become very clunky and they don't look for efficiencies, and then there's a general waste of money when they do that. And so it's really helping them look at all of that and say, how can we be more efficient and effective? And, in their case, being more effective with the monies that they had.
So it sounds like that job right there would help you do in government streamline.
I think that it would. And, I'm the type of person that, I enjoy looking at problems and solving problems. And I think a lot of times, people just don't want to take the time just to look at things and say, how can we fix this and improve it? And they just want to throw money at it and think that, oh, well, if we just add something extra, it's going to fix itself. And that's usually not the case. And I think we see that, and, not to totally skip ahead of what you wanted to ask me, but I mean, we see that with education right now in Alabama. We just keep throwing money at a broken system and we expect money to fix it. And it's not going to fix it. We need to be smarter about it.
I don't know what Alabama ranks now as far as money that is spent on education. I remember one time I think it was 24th or 25th as far as the dollars that was spent on education, and was still ranked 50th. In some cases, we're now below the territories.
Yeah.
Didn't know that was possible to be right below them. But we'll touch on some of that in just a second. So Sheila's out managing some real estate one day and just kind of taking it easy. And then she just says, you know what? I'm going to run for the House. I'm going to go down there and hang out.
Actually, I got involved in some of the political groups here in North Alabama. So for the last 2 years, I've served as the president of the Republican Women of Madison. And I'm also on the Republican Executive Committee for Limestone County. And I got involved with a couple of groups across the state of really incredible people who care about education and have worked with them. And I mean, they're the bigger carriers than myself in lobbying for education. And it was a combination of like working in these 3 areas with these people all across the state. And, more especially with people in North Alabama, that I realized, the people in Montgomery, they're not listening to their constituents. And we're not getting anywhere, especially in education. And so I was like, we need more people who are actually running for, different positions, whether it's the House, the Senate, whatever, but at the state level, who are willing to actually represent the people and not the special interest groups. And I looked at the districts I'm in from a state perspective, from a Senate perspective and a House perspective. And in our House district, the person that's in that district, I personally feel, based on the performance I've seen and talking to other people, like just not a real strong leader, not someone who's willing to go to bat for the people. He failed to cast a vote on the gas tax. Not extremely conservative. I wouldn't say he's extremely liberal, but not extremely conservative, and he represents a conservative district. So it was kind of a combination of all these things that I was just like, I'm sick of complaining about not having better options, so I'm just gonna throw my hat in the ring.
So a rhino, I guess, what you'd call it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people call him a rhino.
So I was just fixing to ask you about this. I'm glad you brought it up when you said a conservative. So, are you a fiscal conservative, socialist conservative, or are you just conservative all the way through?
I think I'm conservative all the way through. I think the government shouldn't be any different than us when it comes to financial responsibility. You and I, if we don't take care of our finances, we can't go into a bank and get a loan and be able to spend money that we don't have, or that we don't have the capability of paying back. And so why should the government be able to do that? And why should the government be able to just raise taxes whenever they want to be able to spend more money? So my understanding is, Alabama has a law where they can't spend more money. So more money than what we have. So they look for ways to raise taxes. I mean, and that's what you see with the gas tax that was passed 4 years ago. What a lot of people don't understand is that's a perpetual tax. It can be raised every 2 years. And, they could have looked for ways to zero that out. If we really needed the money to fund roads, which I'm not saying we didn't. I know some roads up here were pretty bad, so I'm sure we needed it all across the state. But we could definitely find ways to zero that out and have it be a net zero impact for our tax base.
What would you say if I told you that Alabama, out of the out of the 50 states, Alabama has the 15th largest bureaucracy?
It wouldn't surprise me. I didn't know that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
15th largest bureaucracy, and our services for Montgomery are, I would say, inadequate. You just talked about education. What we throw money at it. What do we do to fix it?
Well, I think we need to go in and look at where that money is going to, because we're for 2022 we have over $8 billion going towards education, and we're last in education, both from a math perspective and a reading and writing perspective. I mean, we're so bad. Someone said to me, well, it kind of depends on what scorecard or poll you look at, which is true. I mean, you might look at one scorecard and maybe we're 46, maybe, but still, like, that's the bottom of the barrel, right?
Yeah.
But we're still at the bottom. And so I think we really need to look at how we're spending the money, because, to your point about being a large bureaucracy, I think that's the problem. All the money is going to fund systems and adults opposed to our students and our children. I mean, just for example, today in one of the committee meetings, they were looking at the Literacy Act, that the governor is pushing it. In her State of the State address, she said our number one problem in Alabama is education, and money's not going to fix it. So this Literacy Act bill, they were debating today on whether or not that they should extend implementation for 3 years, delay it for 3 years. So they want to pass this act so they can all go and say, we're tackling the problem with education, but not focus on the part that they delayed it for 3 years. So third graders who are below reading level, nothing's going to be done about that until they're in 7th grade. That's too late.
And it's been that way when I first went to school years ago in the 80s. Our reader was from the 50s.
Oh yeah. Well, I've looked at Alabama's education, and had made really good strides leading up to the implementation of Common Core. They were moving up the rankings. They were, having a lot of success in the curriculum and, with the improvements that they had made. And then, the implementation of Common Core, there's been a steady trend, basically a steady downward trend ever since. And, like going back to my consulting world, whenever you bring some kind of change in, there's always going to be a different performance, because it's, it's something new and people got to get used to it. But the dip should be minimal. You should see a short dip, and then if it's truly a superior solution, then you could see the upward tick again. And we haven't seen that with education. It's continued to go down. And I think part of it too is we're putting, I've talked to so many people lately, and this is one of the fun things about campaigning, or at least I think it is. I'm meeting all kinds of people that I would never just normally meet, right? And
Right.
so I'm talking to them, and I cannot tell you how many teachers I've talked to, um, and parents and moms who I've met several moms who said, I left teaching because teaching stopped being fun because I have to teach to a test. I'm not really teaching children in, in the way that, teachers go in when they go in for their teaching degree. They think I'm going to help foster learning and growth and imagination and creativity. They're like, no, I'm just teaching them how to pass a test. And they said, that's not fun. I just talked to someone this last weekend who he said his daughter she's just out of college, um, just got a, mid-year teaching job. And she's like, yeah, I'm just teaching the test. It's not even fun. This is not what I thought I was signing up to do. And, you know, we're doing our kids a disservice when we just teach them how to pass a test. Like, we need to teach them how to think, how to process, how to engage with one another, how to, you know, be successful adults going forward. And we need to bring that back into education. And I think we do that by, looking at how we're spending the money and seeing where it can be better reallocated. Um, because I think the bureaucracy has taken over.
Yeah, that's just kind of how am I trying to phrase this? If you're all teaching them just to pass a test, it's be the same, almost like robotic in a
Yeah,
sense. Did I say that right? Does that make
yeah,
sense? Robotic?
yeah, for sure.
Um,
Well, here's another interesting thing about it. I talked to another mom or parent. She actually has older kids. She has 4 older kids, and she said her kids went. She didn't tell me the name of the high school, but they all went to one of the top 25 high schools in the state of Alabama. And every single one of her kids, they all went to, I think, University of Alabama. And she said a bunch of other kids from that school all had to pay to take remedial math at Alabama, so just so they could get to college math. It's just like, I'm like, that's very expensive, paying to take remedial math at University of Alabama, which they should have gotten in high school.
do you think that the voters of Alabama should have the right to vote on the education lottery?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something they should. If that's what people want, and the polls are showing that that's the way they want, I have no problem taking it to a vote. However, I don't think a lot money. It goes
Right.
back to how much money do we want to throw at education? We already have $8 billion at education, and we're dead last. So for me personally, I'm not a fan of the lottery, just because I haven't seen it really work well in places. Um,
Well, it's a deceitful.
well, maybe I should say this. Yeah, well, it's deceitful, and I was going to say I've never really seen it benefit what it's supposed to benefit. I guess that's what I see it as. And but if people want to vote on it, if there's enough people that want to vote on it, bring it to the polls. But at the same time, I just think we have to stop the craziness. Like, how much money are we going to spend and get the same results? If you did that in the business world, if we did that in consulting and charged a client that much and got those kind of results, we would be completely out of business.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
So I take it that education's your primary.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my big things, because I think it needs to be addressed, because I live in North Alabama, and one of the school districts, is Madison City Schools, which is a really good school system. And I have neighbors who are like, well, it doesn't, we're in a good school system, so I'm not as worried about it. And I'm like, but we should all be worried about it. We are all neighbors, and even though we're not necessarily live on the same street, what happens to our children are educated is going to impact our future. We need all of our children to be educated and to have opportunities for the future. And so, we need to make sure that everyone is having an opportunity to be educated, has a path for them to be, self-sufficient and productive member of society when they grow up. We're doing them a huge disservice. And also, don't forget, these are our future leaders. If they're not getting educated, what is that going to do for the state of Alabama? We're going to have to import a lot of, external people to work at these companies that we have here. Nobody knows how to do math.
Speaking of that, I mean, what kind of future do you see in Alabama as far as jobs go? I mean, the steel industry's gone in Birmingham. I doubt those are ever going to come back. The manufacturing jobs. Where's the next step for the workforce in Alabama?
Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like, and from everything I've read and have been, known about, I mean, Alabama is doing great when it comes to growth. I mean, we're seeing a lot in down south, in Mobile area. I know North Alabama is just exploding. I don't know if you've been up here, but it's just exploding and growing probably at a rate that's close to probably unmanageable in some ways, because the housing market is just crazy right now because the demand is so high. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in future possibilities for people across the state. May require you to move to a different city, but a lot of great opportunity for jobs. And we just need to, continue building that and helping that growth. But also, again, if you want these companies to come in and stay, you also need to make sure that they have the ability to have the workforce to support the need.
What other issues are you focused on or are important to you?
So another one is just the freedom that we've been basically, I guess, hindered from, the stop of freedom, I guess, that we've experienced the last couple of years. So, that really concerns me. And if we don't get a handle on, what the government thinks they can and cannot do, we're going to have problems in the future. The mask mandates up here in North Alabama, we still have schools that are mask required. They're masking these little kids. And, there's no scientific data that says that should be the case still. If you follow, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but if you look at and again, I'm not a doctor, but if you look at the study or statistics of the people who have been really affected and lost their lives from this, it's not school children. It's not the young. It's usually middle-aged older people who have a health condition. There's been very few kids that died. I don't know what the reasoning for masking and vaccinating these kids. I mean, I haven't taken the vaccine myself. I was like, this is, and I'm not saying people shouldn't. I think that should be left up to that person. But I've never seen something like vaccine works if you're just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and I think it just comes to a greater issue of like, where is that separation between what the government can do in your own individual freedom? So we've watched them, and I'm willing to, like, when this all first came out, there was a lot of things unknown. So I understand why people maybe made some decisions that they did initially. I don't know that I agree with all of them, but first we were locked down and told to stay at home. The government decided what was an essential business versus what wasn't, which I totally disagreed with. I cannot believe how many small businesses have gone out of business because of the lockdowns and the quarantines. Um, and their business was just essential for them and their families and the people who work there as Lowe's and Home Depot were. I talked to somebody and they said, well, I said, well, why is Lowe's and Home Depot essential, but a small restaurant is not? And they said to me, well, people had to have something to do at home. And I'm just like, that's not a good enough reason. Like if it was really that horrible, either everything stops or it doesn't. And so, we saw that, and then it went to masking, and then it went to the vaccines, and it's just way too much overreach, and in my opinion, and I think it's unconstitutional, for them to take this kind of action, and especially where it was coming in, it's come in and caused people to lose their jobs over it. Um,
Double.
yeah, that's just wrong. And
First,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, first I remember Fauci saying masks weren't important and we'd have to just wait. And then the next thing you have people wearing 2 masks and social distancing and taking 3 vaccines and 4 boosters. Like, when's this going?
Well, unfortunately, I feel like, and I felt this way from pretty much the beginning. I think that this has become political, and it's unfortunate because it's become political. I think it's extremely dangerous because people don't know what to believe and what not to believe. But there was a John Hopkins study that just came out a couple weeks ago. John Hopkins is not known to be conservative. They're a pretty liberal institution. And their study, we're over 2 years out now from the start of all this, and their study is like basically none of the precautions that were taken, the lockdowns, the masking, the vaccines, have significantly changed the mortality rate. And so they were basically, done for nothing. I mean, they didn't make a difference, is basically the conclusion of the study. And so, I think with all that said, the thing that bothers me about our state government is, the Ivy says, well, we're not taking this, we're standing up to them. And, the legislator did this big, they passed a couple minor pieces of legislation in regular session of last year, and then the special session in, I think it was November that they passed it. But the problem with all those pieces of legislation is that it didn't do anything for the people. It gave, like, those pieces of legislation did not have any meat in it. So even though it says, oh, you can't do this, it doesn't give the people the ability to go and take this to court and sue their employers or sue whoever's they've been discriminated against. So it was just kind of like, we just passed some legislation to make you appeased, but in the long term, if you're someone who lost your job or whatever, there's no real meat behind it. And I think that's what we see sometimes in government is, people doing things in word, but not giving us, what we need to be able to protect our individual rights. And, the one good thing that the state has done is that that's out of the Attorney General's office. He has sued the federal government on behalf of the state, and that's helped a lot of people. And that's the one good thing that has happened from it. But, I feel like if our lawmakers really want to stand up for our freedom, then pass a law that's going to enable people to stand up for their individual rights and keep their freedom.
Good. I like how you said that. So when did you exactly decide to jump in this race?
It was earlier not this year because this is a new year. It was, yeah, I know it's all like running together.
Once I hit 30, it was all over. As far as that.
Yeah, it was sometime during last year in the summertime-ish. I had been, I had several people say to me and come to me and say, you should run for something. We had city council races kind of towards at the beginning of COVID. And, I had a couple people say, you should really run for city council. And I just didn't feel like the timing was right for me on that. Plus, it was like you had to decide like in a week. And I was like, I need more time to think about it. Because, this isn't really something that, I aspired to do or I plan to do. And, I'm not a politician. This is my first time running for any kind of office. I've always been interested in the process. I've always been interested in politics. But I never really thought about running for office. And so, because I've always been interested in politics and being part of the process, that's why I kind of, I joined the various groups so that I could be part of that and know what to be better informed, that kind of thing. But, the combination of masking our kids, the infringement on our individual liberties, people coming and asking me to run, and basically just getting frustrated that I didn't feel like I had better options to choose from. I just was like, my husband and I, we discussed it, we prayed about it, we felt like this was a good time to come and to be a part of it and give a different option. I'm definitely a for the people kind of person. I don't need the title. I don't need the money. I plan to go and represent the people. And I believe that government should be more transparent and more accountable. And so one of the things that I've done, I don't know if you had a chance to look at my website, but out on my website, I've created, a contract of sorts that just outlines what people should expect from me, what I plan to do, and how I plan to be a leader and represent them. Because I feel like, our representatives should have some kind of a scorecard and some way to evaluate their job performance. And everyone else who works has a job performance review. In consulting, I always had a job performance review that someone went over with me. We had it with our clients. We even judged our projects on. We had a scorecard and always evaluated at the end, like how well did they do. I don't know anybody who works that doesn't have some kind of job performance review. So why don't we have it with our elected officials? And so, if people in my district choose to have me represent them, I want them to know these are the things that you can hold me accountable for. And, I want them to call me out if they feel like I'm not doing it. I mean, I would hopefully that they call me out nicely, but hold me accountable. Let's have transparency.
That's a good answer. Quick question. Do you watch the Andy Griffith Show?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, quick question. Do you watch the Andy Griffith Show?
Oh, I have. Yeah, I haven't watched it in a while. I used to watch it as a kid all the time.
When you said that about city council, it got me to thinking. Did you ever see the episode where Ellie was going to run for city council?
Oh, that sounds familiar. Yeah.
And Andy was there like, oh, well, Ellie, you don't want to get involved in that men stuff and go down there. And the men and women squared off in town. The women quit cooking, and the men had to iron their shirts, was burn them up. And the men cut off the credit cards. It's one of my favorite episodes.
Oh, that's funny.
Barney's signature was on the petition was the one that made her eligible to have enough so she could run. YouTube it, see if you can watch. That's one of my favorite ones up there. So I take it that you're running against an incumbent.
I am.
How long's she? I think you said it was he. How long has he been in office?
So he's been in for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the person that was before him had been in for quite a while, but I don't know exactly how long. but everything I've been told about him and I know about him, he's a very nice person. But he's just not a leader. Like, he was so stressed out about the gas tax, he didn't even cast a vote. You know, he started out, I read some remarks on him when he was elected, what his priorities were going to be. He talked about prison reform. He talked about education, were two big ones that he talked about. Well, in the last 4 years, so our prison reform consists of, just a couple months ago, they decided to actually put some money together and build prisons. Which is great, but I'm not sure that really solidifies prison reform. That might be one step of reform, but when you talk about prison reform, like, we need the whole process to be looked at and say, okay, are we providing an opportunity for not only restitution but rehabilitation? Because if we don't allow rehabilitation and for these people who make mistakes to be able to come back out into society and be successful, they're going to end up just being right back in there.
Yeah, let me ask you a question about that I've talked to some people about. I've known people who were not violent offenders, really hadn't committed any major felonies, but had been busted for drug offenses and got sent to prison. And to me, I thought those laws are very draconian, that you're creating a revolving door. Is there something that we can look to maybe putting these people in some type of rehab instead of sending them to prison? Because it just seems like they made a mistake, ruining their lives, and we're just, like I said, creating a revolving door. Somebody's going to stay in prison from here on out.
Well, absolutely. And I think what we also need to do is, I think there's two areas that we really need to focus on with our offenders is, do they fall into the drug user, and do they fall into a mental health issue, where they're mentally not right? And we need to address those offenders in a different way, and maybe in a slightly different type of facility. I mean, maybe we have different types of facilities that we can use to put them in there. And part of this too is like, this is kind of a problem. My understanding is Alabama used to have some mental health facilities that police officers could take, like homeless people and things like that, who really just, they weren't in their right mind, which is why they were behaving the way they were. But we don't have those anymore. And so, we're just putting too much on law enforcement right now. And, the real people we need to go after when it comes to the drug stuff are the suppliers. Because if we can get at the suppliers, then, and come hard on them, that's going to help our situation, but, here's the other thing I've seen, and I have not seen this personally in Alabama, but there's some people that I know whose, child got, they're a child, they were a teenager, got mixed up with the wrong people, got caught using marijuana, and then they go to jail, and they're in with hardened criminals. So this young person who just made a bad choice is now thrown in with hardened criminals being tutored by them. And it was kind of the start of the decline for this child, who then grew up into an adult and just made ongoing, just bad choices. And so, I really think that true prison reform has to have those other components of it. Like, are we allowing these people to get GEDs, develop skills, so that when they've paid their time, they've made restitution, that they're rehabilitated and they can be successful when they walk out, so they don't end up coming back, a week, 6 months, however long after.
Yeah, and I'm for one. I think that we should look at doing away with no prison time for nonviolent offenders. Just seems like, if you want to there's lots of things you can have them do besides going to, sitting in prison.
Oh, right, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things you can do. It doesn't have to be, and I don't think it should. Like, we live in such a complex world. It shouldn't be a one size fits all. We should have different categories and levels. And, you know,
I mean, I think
go ahead.
mental health. I think it was Earlene Wallace when she was governor. That was her kind of pet project. Of course, she died after about a year in office. But I think mental health was her thing.
Well, that was a while ago.
Yeah, 60. Yeah, she took off 67 and died in 68. I don't know what our subsequent governors have done since that. But yeah, mental health is something that's very overlooked. And when you talk about the police officers a while ago, they're not really trained to deal with people with mental health problems. They're trained to go after the bad guys. They're not trained that. Like I said, our law enforcement are already overstretched as it is. Let's see. I'm pretty impressed that you're one of the first people who hasn't espoused. When I said I get so sick of hearing this when people espouse, I'm a Christian conservative and I'm a Trump supporter. Look, these cliches are enough. I mean, I can sound them off with pro-gun, I'm pro-God, anti-abortion, pro-Trump. It's just cliches. Stop telling me that. What do. Okay, tell me what you want to do. I don't care. I know you're all pro-Trump. You're all Christian conservatives. I've never heard of a Christian liberal but it's the same. It's the same thing with every one of them. It drives me crazy when they start espousing it.
Well, I kind of feel like some of that should be a given. Like, I shouldn't have to say like some of that stuff, because you can go out to my website. I really want to talk about my number one interest in running for this position is to go in and to make a difference and to bring, I think one of our biggest problems, and I mean, I think you find this in a lot of different organizations, not just in government, but I think government gets bogged down with the bureaucracy, that people aren't willing to be innovative and look at things from a different lens or from a different angle and say, let's be creative and come up to bring all the players to the table, and let's find a solution or maybe a series of solutions that will make this situation, whatever it is, better for everyone else. And I think we need to do that more in government. We need to put our parties aside for a second. We don't need to put our principles and our values aside, but we need to bring everybody to the table and say, hey, how can we make this better and suit everyone in Alabama? And, I look at the school choice or the parent choice topic that's super hot right now because of the SB 140. And I know there's an equivalent House bill, but I don't remember the number of it. But, the Teachers Association is really against it. And here's what I don't understand is that when you look across the United States, there are states that have a combination of school choice. They have public schools, they have charter schools, they have magnet schools, they have private schools, they have homeschooling. And they're all very successful. They work, and they're not last. They're not in the last half of the ratings as far as education as education goes, scoring goes, student readiness. I know the lieutenant governor has really been a big participant on a new trade school that's going down in Mobile. But why don't we have trade schools available all across the state? Not everybody needs to go to college afterwards, after high school. Nor do they want to.
That was one, and again, I don't know how they are now, but that was Wallace's really a signature thing, and I think it's 64. First of all, his first act was the free textbook act until he became governor. Students had to pay for their own textbooks in Alabama. And the Trade School Act, you get them set up all over, and they used to do it in high school. Where you start in 10th or 11th grade, and you would go to the county trade school and you would learn a trade. And you're right. That's I don't know why that's not pushed more, because some people aren't meant to go to college, but would be a great electrician, a great plumber, and would make. I was, this guy was having this debate once, and he was talking about how all the student loans should be paid for, and I was like, no, they shouldn't. And he's like, yeah, and I was like, look, he said something about an electrician, and I said, look, you want me to pay for the student loans for this guy sitting down at Starbucks that's got a doctor's degree in theater, that's complaining about capitalism, but yet you're saying this guy who's an electrician that went to school for 2 years making $70,000 a year, he's not as smart as that guy? I said, no, I don't buy that at all. You don't put somebody down because they're a plumber or electrician or a welder.
Absolutely not. Well, and here's the thing, like, we need all of those people. We need all of those professions. So my husband, before he went into the Air Force, he was a plumber. He needed to make money, and so he went as apprentice after high school and learned the plumbing trade. And let me tell you, I'm so grateful that he knows those skills, because we have saved a lot of money because he's been able to fix some of our plumbing problems. But here's the thing, like, and I'm not sure on this 100%, but it seems like to me sometime during the Bush Obama period, like, we got to this this mentality of like, well, you can only be successful if you go to traditional university colleges. And like, I've had this conversation with many people, but especially with my brother, who he's more of a trades guy. I'm like, success is not defined by whether or not you go to college or a traditional university. Being a successful person is someone who is, self-reliant, respectful, who's living out their dream, whatever that looks like, right? We don't all have the same dreams. And so it's, are you doing those things and achieving the goals that you want to do in your life? And if you are, then you're successful. That's you, and it doesn't have to look like everyone else. I personally, I went to college. I have a master's degree in organizational management, but that was my thing. But I grew up in a single family home. My dad wasn't very responsible, and so we struggled a lot growing up. And I paid my whole way through college, through either working, scholarships, Pell Grant, and student loans. And I paid off all of my student loans. So I have a real hard time, like, being a poor kid, growing up as a poor kid, and working super duper hard. And then, it took me a good 10 plus years to pay off those loans after I graduated. But I did it. And, I think people now should have to do that too. Like, we appreciate our education more.
I told him, I said, we started talking about, oh gosh. Talking about, was Biden going to do it or not? And I said, no. I said, you realize he's going to piss off a lot of people who went through loans now, because I don't know what happened, but this under 30 crowd thinks that they're entitled. They're owed everything. I don't know where this happens. It hasn't been just that long ago. Even some of our greatest generation is still around, and you've got this group. And while we're on that, let me ask you something, 'cause that got me thinking about a Facebook ban I got one time, because I had this meme that got brought the entire LGBTQIMNOPQ, or how many other letters go in there, down on me. I had it showed Normandy, and said men and or 17-year-olds in 1944, and then it showed this boy that was had his like blue hair, and he was crying. It said 17-year-olds today, they need a safe place when you make fun of them because they dressed up like My Little Pony. And What is the deal that we are now catering to 0.5% of the population, where we have transgenders and people not knowing what bathroom to go to? Where's this going to stop as a society? I mean, this has got to give. What's
Well, I think part of it is, this continues as long as we allow it to continue, and this didn't just happen overnight. This has been happening gradually, time after time after time, and people have not been willing to stand up and to say, no, this isn't right. I look at a lot of the policies that we have going on, not only at a state level, but at a federal level, where we basically have been training our youth to expect and be entitled to things. Like, even with education, the Constitution does not say that you have the right to a public education. That's not one of our rights. Is it a good thing for our public? Yes, of course it is, but it's not a right. And so I think we've kind of confused what is a true liberty and a God-given right that we have. We've confused that with things that could be good and beneficial to our communities. And we've allowed this liberal agenda to go forward so far. And you look at these different policies, and really what it really comes down to, in my opinion, is that these are attacks against the nuclear family. When you have a welfare program that's going to reward you for being a single mom with a bunch of kids, opposed to like trying to work it out with the dad and being a cohesive, strong family, that's an assault against the family. And if we want strong communities, if we want a strong nation, we have to have strong families. And I'm not saying that divorce doesn't happen. I'm not, things happen. I get it. But our goal should be developing strong families. And so when you have policies that do everything but encourage strong families, just the fact that you talk to young children about, well, do you really think you're a girl or do you really think you're a boy? I'm sorry, but I agree with the Eagle Forum on that. That's child abuse. You're confusing them. And there's no place for that.
I was in this, and I was making my point, and the person said, well, you don't know what it's like to raise a gender fluid child. I said, that's what I'm talking about right there. That is what I'm talking about. I don't know what that means, but I know it doesn't sound right. I mean, because the first time I got called a cis man, I thought I was being insulted. I was like, and they said, no, you identify with the gender you was born with. I said, I didn't need a term to tell me that.
And don't you think we're kind of just complicating things that don't need to be complicated?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And another thing, I was listening to this the other day. This guy was asking for his time off from work because his wife was having a baby and he was going to put it in for his maternity leave. Now, if they want to give the man time off to go with the child, or whatever, that's fine. But don't call it maternity leave, okay, for the man.
I thought they called it paternity.
This one they said he asked for maternity. Maybe it is most cases, but I was like, don't call it that. I mean, because this, they what is it now that we have? Like, we don't have Mother's Day and Father's Day. It's like Parent Day or something. I don't know. I mean,
oh really? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I saw something like that the other day, and they're like, we're taking away all genders in society.
And here's the other thing. Like, we need to be focused on becoming a more resilient people, and we need to be focused on raising our children to be resilient. Right now, there's so much focus as, oh, I'm offended. That offends me. Well, there's a lot of things that I could be offended by every single day. But if, I feel like being offended is largely a choice, because most of the time I think that the majority of the time, most people are not trying to be offensive. And, there are appropriate times where someone says something really insensitive, and it's probably appropriate to pull that person aside and say, hey, this was insensitive or whatever, or you could have said this in a kinder way, a more gentle way. But at the same time, we each have individual responsibility to not be so easily offended. And, we're not going to make it, we're not going to make it as communities, as individuals, as a nation, if we're so easily offended all the time.
You're exactly right, and I'll just go ahead and say it because I watched it several times. I thought it's hilarious. What Dave Chappelle said, he didn't say anything bad. I mean, he didn't say anything. I mean, when I asked him, I said, "What did he really say that bothered you? And what part did he say? Well, it was hate. What part was hateful? What he wasn't. He didn't say anything that was hateful. He didn't say anything that would inspire violence against transgendered people. So get over it."
Well, and the thing is again, that kind of goes back to also like, where's the personal responsibility?
Yeah.
Like, when you're at a certain age, you should know certain things. You should know basic right from wrong. You should know, basic laws, that kind of thing. Like, hate's not good. I don't know anybody who can even exist partially in the world today and not know that, even if you're feeling maybe hateful in your heart, you should kind of keep it to yourself. Like, there's an appropriate way to express it. And just because someone else expresses their frustration, that doesn't mean it's causing someone else to be violent. I guess is my point. I don't know if I'm saying it very clearly, but like, just because I say something about how I feel about something and you hear it, you're still responsible for your actions. I'm not responsible for your actions.
Yeah, it was the kind of, and I'll one big this right here too. During when Trump was in office, they said, "Oh, he's inciting white supremacist around." I said, "No, he's not. Where are you getting this from? How is he causing anybody to act out in violence?" I said, "Are you even listening to what he says, or are you listening to the 7 seconds that CNN plays for you?" Because there was a big difference when you played the whole tape of what the president said, and what you heard their spin on it. I don't. I don't like the name CNN or somebody said.
Yeah.
I never thought being in the media.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I always try to go out and look at some foreign press too. Like, whenever I'm looking at clips and I'm like, seems like maybe something's missing here contextually. Sometimes I go out to and look for foreign press to see if they picked it up, because sometimes you find the missing pieces of what was really said.
Yeah. One thing I've seen that we played, Fox News plays the whole tape. They don't cut it off, and see it. I can go back countless tapes. I mean, starting back with that kid up there that was smiling, and the Indian was playing the violin in his face.
Oh yeah, I forget that kid's name.
Yeah, and they had it just. He was causing all this problem, and then you see the whole tape, and you're like, no, that's not what happened at all. And CNN is bad about doing that. When the Trump, they would play, he would have a 2-hour speech or rally or something, and they'd play 3-second sound bites and run their story with it right there. And they can I mean, they are, when he said that they're vultures, I mean, they are vultures. I'm telling you, they have an agenda, and they're not going to stop till they make people believe it.
Yeah, it's true. And that's why I think it's really important for everyone to take personal responsibility, learn about the issues, learn about your candidates, and understand what's going on. Because right now, we have a small minority basically running the country and running our state. And,
right.
I've talked to several people about this. Like, we talk a lot about, we hear people talk about the DC swamp, but how many times are people talking about the Montgomery swamp?
Oh, absolutely.
And, there's just, and I'm not saying everybody there is like this, because I know not everybody is, but there's too many that cater to the special interest lobbyist groups and aren't really voting how the people that they're supposed to represent want them to vote.
Oh, yeah.
And here's my take on it, is that if there's something really good for the state, but the people in your district don't want it, then it's your responsibility as that representative and that leader in that capacity to go back and help make the case for why it's good. If you really want it and you really think it's really what's in the best interest of the state, then you have a responsibility to go back to your people and make a case for it and help them to understand why it's good for the state. Otherwise, if you can't do that and you're not willing to do that, you need to vote how your people want you to vote. That's why you're there.
All right. So, is there anything else that you the constituents to know for this? For you, your last pitch. I mean,
Yeah, well, I mean, I just hope that everybody is willing to go out and give me fair consideration. My website is SheilaBanister.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And, I'm happy to have conversations with people. The main thing to know about me is that I love America. I love the Constitution. I'm for freedom. I'm for standing up for the future and for our values as Americans. And I'm willing to be that type of leader to represent the people, to support and defend the Constitution, both of the United States and of Alabama. And, check out my stuff and vote on May 24th.